Good afternoon, everyone joining us. We will be starting momentarily. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today for the Outcomes for Me webinar within our coronavirus series. We're really excited to be having you all with us today. Today's topic is going to be a real good one. It's about nutrition and diet and how it relates to breast cancer. We get a lot of questions from you guys about this, and we are excited to have with us today survivor herself, a nutritionist and dietitian with over 20 years of experience, Cathy Leman, who's also founded the Damn Mad About Breast Cancer and Higher Ground Breast Cancer Survival Membership. She is going to be able to answer all of our questions on managing emotional eating while stuck at home, understanding the differences between nutrition and diet, especially as it relates to breast cancer patients. A little bit about me. I'm Alon. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Outcomes for Me. Outcomes for Me is an app that helps empower breast cancer patients with the tools and resources you need to better navigate your care. The format today, really quickly, is going to be one part discussion and then one part Q&A. So we've gotten a bunch of questions from you guys via social media, through email, in-app, so thank you for that. And we encourage you to send us questions via Zoom throughout here. So if you go to the bottom in the Q&A section, you could send us questions and we'll do our best to incorporate them into our discussion today. So we will do a quick discussion with a lot of the questions we already got with Cathy, and then we will infuse those questions as well. So I want to start off by allowing Cathy to give a very brief introduction to herself, and we'll jump right in because we have a lot to cover.
Yes, hi Alon, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, and we did get so many great questions and we have a lot to cover, so I'll make this very quick. So I am Cathy Leman and I am a registered dietitian. I'm also a personal trainer, and I am a breast cancer survivor just a little bit past 5 years now. And I have worked as a dietitian and nutrition therapist for 20 years, as you said, and I have devoted my career to working with women for prevention and reduction of risk. And so what I do now is take that same work and work within the breast cancer community to help health-centered women use nutrition and lifestyle education and support to live life very resiliently wherever they are in the breast cancer continuum, whether they've been initially diagnosed, they're in treatment, they're post-treatment survival, or they're living with metastatic breast cancer.
Awesome. So yeah, let's dive right in. I want to give you guys, have you actually give everyone an overview of understanding of nutrition and diet. So if you can just give a brief explanation so everyone understands the difference between the two, I think it would give us all a safe playing field to start from.
Sure. Okay, so what I'd like to start off with is just give you just to kind of set the stage for today in terms of expectations of the tone of the work that I do. I'm a registered dietitian. We are science and evidence-based and trained, and that is where my work leads from. And I know in the breast cancer world, there is so much misinformation and misnomers, so many misnomers out there, that I really work to set the record straight on what's most beneficial to health. So the core values of my work and what distinguishes me as a trained nutrition professional who, by the way, had breast cancer versus someone who had maybe did or didn't have breast cancer and is not as qualified or trained, are these four things. The information I share is sensible versus sensationalized. It is evidence versus a belief. And it builds behavior change over time versus do this one thing. And it focuses on reducing risk versus guarantees. And what I like to do is, when we're talking about nutrition and diet for the breast cancer community, is bring people back to those reminders, because nutrition is a science. It's not an opinion. And everyone has an opinion about nutrition. Like, Alon, you may say, I hate broccoli. Mm-hmm. That's an opinion. I happen to love broccoli. That's my opinion. But that doesn't have any impact on the science of broccoli or the science of nutrition around broccoli and how the nutrients in broccoli can help with the breast cancer, reducing risk of recurrence or initial diagnosis. So just to set the stage with that, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So the difference between nutrition and diet is this. So nutrition is the process of actually taking in food and how your body uses that to digest and metabolize and assimilate or build things like proteins and enzymes, which are also proteins, and transport and then excrete. So when you eat the broccoli and I eat the broccoli, our metabolic makeup, we all have a digestive system. You and I both have a digestive system, but how that broccoli is utilized individually can vary based on a number of factors. But that's the nutrition side of it. What diet is food that you eat. Like you eat broccoli in your diet, or maybe you eat a vegetarian diet, or maybe someone eats a meat-centered diet. It's a type of diet that you eat on a consistent basis or a pattern of eating. And it also can be a kind or amount of food that's prescribed for a particular reason, like a low sodium diet for hypertension. And that's what we as dietitians do. We're trained to work clinically in that respect to prescribe diets, as well as from a preventive standpoint. So that's the difference.
That's great. Thank you for explaining that. I want to jump into now actually the idea of your immune system. So we had a lot of questions about immune system, and it's very interesting because a lot of users have reached out to us saying that, they want to know how to boost their immune system or support their immune system. And right off the bat, when we were chatting, Cathy, you were explaining that there's a huge difference between the two and why I would want to either boost or support your immune system and what the difference is between the two. So I want you to clarify the difference between boosting and supporting your immune system and what you actually want. And then I also would love for you to answer some of these direct questions where people were asking, how can we use nutrition to build our immune system? And can you address strategies to boost immunity prior to having a mastectomy? So if you can go into that, that'd be great.
Yes. Okay. So supporting immunity is the word you want to use and the word you want to look for if you're reading about it out in the lay publications. You want to support immunity versus boost it, because boosting immunity means putting your immune system into overdrive. And an immune system that is overreactive is just as dangerous and harmful as an immune system that is underreactive, just in a different way. So if you have an immune system that stops working or is less effective because you're immunocompromised, that has one outcome. But an overactive immune system, it leads to autoimmune disorders because it can't tell your healthy normal cells from the invaders. And so an overactive immune system will take out every cell, healthy and non-healthy. It turns against you, essentially. And so celiac disease and irritable bowel syndrome, those are two nutrition-related autoimmune diseases where you have a boosted or overactive immune system. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
The two? Okay. So like anything, we don't want extremes with the body. Your body exists in a very neutral place in terms of pH balance and heart rhythm and blood pressure and blood sugar. Right? That's where your body likes to hang out, in that very balanced situation. So if it's over or under in any regard, that's when the alarm bells go off and things start to happen that may not be favorable to ongoing health. So to speak to your question about preparing for mastectomy or lumpectomy or heading into radiation or chemotherapy, any of the treatment modalities, you want your body to be as resilient as it can be heading in. And the best thing that you could do is to eat a nourishing, well-balanced diet. I know that sounds boring, but there really aren't any secrets to that. And we're going to talk further on about what a well-nourished and balanced diet is, but it's really focusing on quality and certain, cutting out the junky stuff that doesn't really, it's not a bad thing to eat junk, I'm not saying that, but as we're talking about breast cancer nutrition, what you want to focus on, particularly at the start of your treatment, is thinking about the environment of your body and making it as conducive to healing and recovery and optimal outcomes as you can. And it can't do that as well with junky food, because junky food takes energy. When we talked about what nutrition is, it's how your body uses food. So junk food is food and your body views it as food, but there's no nutrient value in it. But your body uses nutrients to break it down and use it in the body. So it's almost like negative nutrition. And when you're heading into treatment, you want to optimize nutrition.
So it's interesting because we actually got a question here, and I'm pretty sure you just addressed it, but specifically asking about what can be done nutritionally prior to mastectomy to aid immunity and healing. So would you give this person who asked this question the same advice that you just gave? That just, you know, stay away from that junky food, eat a well-balanced meal, and that should really aid in your immunity and healing?
Yeah, immune system is really, so immune system needs adequate protein in order to, because protein, and there, you actually gave me a question about branched chain amino acids, which I'll just talk about that as well. And
Yeah,
you
sure.
also gave me one about glutamine. And so under the whole umbrella of amino acids, those are branched chain amino acids and glutamine, those are all amino acids. The thing is, immune system does rely on amino acids in order to function optimally. So for example, let me give you a few examples of what happens. So lymphocyte responsiveness and T cell responsiveness, those are like your helper fighter cells. And we need those to be functioning optimally. They need protein to support them in doing that. That doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to come from a supplement. It needs to come from food first. And so what I find often is people are looking for the magic supplement or the magic pill or powder, yes, or meal replacement to optimize their the integrity of their body, the resilience of their body as they're heading into treatment. And remember, when I say treatment, that's any surgery or actually radiation or chemo. But the truth of the matter is we look at how well nourished are you heading into treatment. And when I say well nourished, I don't mean did you get enough to eat for breakfast? Because we all live in a very well nourished country. Malnourishment is not really an issue here in this country. Right. We tend to be overnourished, right? Overfed and undernourished.
Yeah.
So you can be overfed going into treatment, and your cells can be undernourished because you're overfed on food that doesn't give your body the building blocks that it needs to function optimally. Yeah. So those amino acids come from protein. So adequate protein from protein food sources, and antioxidants and phytochemicals from foods that give you those sources. So this whole collection and pattern of eating that supports immune system and overall resilience is really the foundation of that.
So it's interesting you're talking about like overeating, because I feel that a lot of us are doing this during this time, during this pandemic. I mean,
oh yeah,
we're in this emotional, so especially for breast cancer patients, so many of breast cancer patients are going through some sort of emotional toll, mentally, physically, and with the pandemic thrown in, emotional eating is at an all-time high. So I want to talk really quickly about the idea of emotional eating and sugar-based eating. It came from one user who asked, you know, she likes to have a small sweet and treat occasionally. What's the relationship between cancer and sugar? So is it okay to have that occasional sweet treat? And you know, what would you say about that?
Okay, so we have 3 questions right there. Emotional eating, how do we manage that? What's the relationship to sugar and breast cancer? Yeah. And is it okay to have a sweet treat?
Yeah.
So let's start with emotional eating.
Okay.
So yes, emotional eating it's stress eating. It's in response to, it's a coping mechanism. And some people are more likely to, well, let me back up. Just like some people might be more likely to reach for alcohol or a cigarette or gambling or shopping online to relieve stress, some people reach for food.
Yeah.
And that's emotional eating. It's eating without thinking about it. It's eating when you're not hungry. It has nothing to do with physiological hunger. It has to do with heart hunger and head hunger and terror hunger. I mean, it's not physiological hunger, such as if someone was saying, you know, in the kitchen kind of looking around for something to eat, and I was with them, and I knew they were struggling with emotional eating as a challenge for them. I would say, so we have apples. Would you like an apple? And they're like, no, I don't want an apple, but I would love a donut. Right. Okay, that's not true physiological hunger. And so that is under that heading of emotional eating or stress eating or anxiety eating or boredom eating. I've had a number of people reach out to me and say they're eating out of boredom.
Right.
And so it's really a coping mechanism. It soothes people, it comforts them, it distracts them. You know, going to the kitchen for a snack, if you're trying to do work from home or you've been listening to the news too much and you need a distraction, Food is a great distraction. So it's really about a couple of things, just being aware that you're doing it. Like if you find yourself in the kitchen and you're like, I'm not really, how do that apple test. Ask yourself, would I eat an apple? And if you say, I don't want an apple, but I would love a Snickers bar, you know that this is coming from a place of emotion or distraction or something that's not related to true hunger.
Really quick before you go on to answer the other part, someone just asked live, which I think is really important. What coping mechanisms can you suggest instead of emotional eating?
Oh, a million. It just depends on what speaks to you. So moving your body is a really, not only in the science is it shown as a way to move emotion and that negative energy through your body, you can just feel it. I mean, so that's more anecdotal evidence, but it's using movement, whether you go for a walk, whether you dance at home, have a virtual dance party with someone, or just with yourself, whether you go for a run, you get on your bike, whatever you can do physically, lift some weights. A lot of people are bringing in home fitness equipment so they can work out at home. Something that's physical that really connects your brain to your body and moves that emotion through your body. Doing something else instead of, can you text a friend? Can you call someone? Can you leave the room and change your focus to doing something different, such as deep breathing? You know, just take 5 minutes and breathe deeply, sit in a place where it's quiet, think about, you know, how you shift your thinking, how you shift what's on your mind. If you think, just think the word calm and breathe. I mean, these are deliberate actions, intentional actions though. And I recommend that people have a list of 5 or 10 coping mechanisms. In fact, I just wrote about this on my blog last week, 5 or 10 coping mechanisms that you can type up or write up and put on your refrigerator, so that when you find yourself heading to the refrigerator and you're like, oh wait, I'm not really hungry, I'm just looking for something to do, or because I'm freaking out, pick one of those that's on your list and do that. You'll sit down and read a book for 5 minutes. Usually what happens if you can just break that spell of feeling that urge, because that's really an urge to emotionally eat. If you can shift the urge and ride the urge as a wave, surf it, it will leave. So it's really finding something to put into that spot that fills you up, whether that's dancing or reading or texting a friend or clean the toilet, for heaven's sake. I mean, we're all at home, stuck at home. Go clean your bathroom for 10 minutes and you'll be like, oh yeah, I'm not hungry anymore.
You don't always have to get full with food. There are other ways to feel full. So
thank you. That's a wonderful way to say it. Fill yourself up with something other than food. Yeah.
But I want to go back to that relationship between cancer and sugar. I think it's a really important one. So let's make sure we address that real fast.
Okay, and I have some bullet points because I want to make sure this is such a hot topic and there's so much misinformation, and I pulled out what I felt like were the really high points and I want to share those with you. So number one, so the relationship between sugar and cancer is not completely understood in the scientific community. It is being studied, trust me. But what they're looking to understand is how the biology of a tumor and the tumor metabolism interacts with nutrition. So, you know, are you premenopausal, postmenopausal? What type of cancer do you have? Triple negative, hormonally positive? What does that have an impact? Because the biology of a tumor, cancer is a metabolic disease, and glucose, blood sugar in the body, that is a metabolic component. That is a piece of your whole entire metabolism, how your body takes in sugar and uses it. So they are connected.
Yes. All
right. So that's number one. Number two, where are you on the breast cancer continuum? If you have just newly been diagnosed, you still have the active cancer in your body. And I find that that's when women tend to be really nervous. They're like, should I eat sugar? Because I've heard it makes it worse. My surgery is not until 4 weeks or whenever, and I don't know if I should be eating it. Or a woman who has metastatic breast cancer. Should I be eating sugar? I don't want to hasten, the disease progression.
Right.
If you're in treatment, but let's say you've had surgery and now you're in radiation or whatever order that happens for you, are you looking to optimize your outcomes by, and so they'll look at the sugar impact, how well I do in treatment or not. And then if you're in survival, how does it fit there? So it has someone to look at where they're at in that continuum, because I think people hear different answers depending on where they're at. Number three, if you do, there's a lot of focus on low or no carb diets, okay?
Yes.
But your body will still it will still transform protein and fat into glucose, which is blood sugar, if you don't have enough of it, adequate amounts for your brain to use, because your brain needs glucose. So your body has a way of getting around you trying to not give it what it needs to do its job. So keep that in mind, because I often hear women say, well, I'm just cutting out all sugar. That's impossible, first of all, because
It's possible.
you're right, sweet is one of those.
It's in everything.
First of all, why would you never want to eat something sweet again? I mean, that's torture. That would be torture. But there is a caveat to that. Okay, so sugar has an impact on the development of breast cancer. The development doesn't cause it. Has an impact on development. But the mechanism is unclear and the data is inconsistent at this point. So one proposed mechanism is inflammation. And we're going to talk about inflammation. But obesity is a driver of systemic low-grade overall inflammation. So if someone is overfed, as we talked about earlier, but undernourished, because they have a diet that leans more toward the junky, high added sugar foods, which in and of themselves don't necessarily cause obesity, but they can contribute, then that can contribute to overall inflammation, which increases breast cancer risk. We know that. All right. So that's another one. So it's not directly the cause, but what sugar does is it exerts influence on certain particular signaling signals and pathways that's involved in promoting its development. So this is the biochemistry of your body. This is that mechanism of metabolism, the tumor biology. Okay, so this is where that comes from. So cancer cells use all the same building blocks as normal cells. Cancer cells take up sugar, normal cells take up sugar. They both use it, but cancer cells are very hyperactive because they're quickly dividing, so they use more. So think of glucose as gasoline, and all the cells in your body uses glucose as the gasoline fuel. Normal cells use a reasonable amount. Cancer cells are gas guzzlers because of their rapid dividing. So they take up more glucose. So that doesn't necessarily mean it's driving the cancer. It means the cancer's already in hyperbolic overdrive, and so it needs more fuel. All right. Couple more points. Insulin resistance. You may have heard that term, insulin resistance. We all produce insulin in our pancreas unless we have type 1 diabetes, in which case you take insulin to do that for you. But you may produce insulin, but because you are obese or inactive, your cells can't use that insulin as effectively to get the blood sugar out of your blood, get the sugar out of your bloodstream and into the cells to do the work. There's resistance to insulin doing its job. So now you have high levels of blood glucose. That is a factor that contributes to risk. All right. So stable, healthy blood sugar is important, whether or not you have diabetes. And then finally, really, this speaks to the question about, is it okay to have added treats? What I'm talking about when I say sugar in this regard, I'm talking about added sugar. Added. So when people talk about fruit or dried fruit, like raisins or dried apricots or an apple, those have sugar. So does barley and oatmeal. Those are carbohydrates that are converted to sugar in the body. But that is what we call natural sugar. And you should have no qualms about eating natural sugars in terms of their health impact, because those come packaged with nutrients.
Right.
When we're talking about junky sugary treats that have added sugar, like granulated sugar, or goes by a million different names, that's the sugar that you want to reduce. Okay? So if someone says, I want to really cut out, or you can't cut out added sugar completely unless you only eat whole foods because it's in everything. So becoming a sugar sleuth and seeing where it's at, reducing your intake of it and focusing on the natural sugars, that's going to balance the nourishment of that diet.
You know, Judith over here asked a question that I think really speaks to this point. It's, okay, we're doing all this stuff, but at the end of the day, is there any scientific evidence that even shows that good nutrition and balanced food will extend one's life, especially for breast cancer patients? There is certain science out there, and there are places where there aren't certain science out there. So is there any scientific evidence that shows that good nutrition will extend your life?
So we're talking about mortality
Yeah.
versus recurrence risk.
Yes.
Okay. So we don't have any guarantee about mortality for any diet, for any one person, cancer or not cancer. So what I encourage Judith to do, as well as all the rest of your viewers, is to step back and look with a wider lens.
Mm-hmm.
If you are in cancer survivorship, okay, your goal, you have two goals. Reduce your risk of recurrence as best you can. There's no guarantee for that. Everything I do, I know there's no guarantee. I just do the best I can because I know that in the research, there is a connection in terms of potentially benefiting outcomes. That's what we have right now. We don't have guarantees.
Right.
And in terms of mortality, there is some research that will show we saw an increase in all-cause mortality with this particular outcome. We saw a decrease in all-cause mortality with this particular outcome. Depends on the research you're looking at and what particular food, okay? But overall, if your goal is to reduce your risk of recurrence, so what do we see in the research that supports that? It is activity, being highly active, exercise, almost more importantly than diet, and then a plant-based nourishing diet, which we'll talk more about. Those two things seem to confer the most benefit. Oh, and reducing alcohol. So those are the three things that we know tend to have the strongest impact. But the second thing Judith and other survivors need to look at is you are now looking at the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years of your life. So now you're eating for quality of life and aging healthfully. So the risk of heart disease is higher in women who've had breast cancer. That's, there's statistical evidence to show that. Risk of diabetes increases as you are less active and as you age, particularly if you have a family genetic component. Hypertension, where is that in your family risk? So you want to, so what I always remind women is if you are eating just for breast health, keep in mind your breasts are connected to the rest of your body. And when you are eating for healthy breasts, you are eating for a healthy heart, healthy cognition, healthy blood pressure, healthy blood sugar, strong, you're eating to keep yourself healthy overall. So that's really the goal is how can I, if you want to live a resilient, robust life, you've got the fuel you put in your body really impacts the outcome. Skin integrity, how well your nails, everything, immune system, it's all connected. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like recurrence risk also is really important to discuss. And we are also getting questions about like, are there any specific foods that you can recommend to help with reducing recurrence risk?
Yeah, we're going to get to that. We have that at the end, right?
Yeah, but
we can do it now if you want to do it now.
Yeah, could we touch upon it real fast?
Yeah, sure. Let me just look at my. So here's what we don't have. Mm-hmm. We do not have data that supports if you eat apples, bananas, pineapple, and broccoli, your risk of recurrence drops by 50%. We don't have that. People eat food. They don't eat individual nutrients and individual phytochemicals.
Correct.
Okay. And what they study in the research is they will study, let's say they study quercetin is a phytochemical. You find it in apples, you find it in onions and other foods. Okay. So they may be studying quercetin, but they study it whole. When your body takes in quercetin, remember back to the nutrition description, it is broken down into many bioavailable components that your body then shuttles off to do the work where it is needed, all right? How you do that in your body, how I do that in my body may differ, all right? And a lot of the studies on that are in animal studies. Animals don't use nutrients the same way that humans do, so we need more human studies. It's very difficult to study diets in humans because you need long-term data, and it's difficult to follow someone long-term with those types of specifics. So what we do have is we have, there's something called the Coordinated Update, or excuse me, the Continuous Update Project, which is a wonderful ongoing study that looks at physical activity and nutrition in a variety of cancers, okay? So what we're looking at long-term, this is, I can't wait until this happens, is where we can target a specific diet for a specific individual based on their tumor biology and their own genetics, and so that's individualized precision nutrition. That would be the holy grail. We're not there yet, But
Right.
what we do know in the research is looking at a plant-based diet. Plant-based does not mean vegan, does not mean vegetarian.
Correct.
It means put more plants on your plate, push meat to the side. There are some guidelines for how much red meat in a week, which is 18 ounces. It's what's recommended per week. Really eliminating or reducing processed meats. Really look at the alcohol side of things. I find so many women ask me about, should I eat a banana? I've heard the sugar is bad. And at the same time, they're having 2 and 3 glasses of wine at night. That's
Right.
not judging. That's just being honest. I'm like, no. If you're worried about recurrence, keep the banana, reduce or eliminate the wine. Because if you look, we know alcohol, it's not just wine, it's beer, it's gin, it's tequila, it's Cosmos, it's anything. It's the ethanol in alcohol that is carcinogenic. We have data to show that.
Well,
and so
that's so interesting because so many people don't even think about that. They're like, well, I need this.
No.
So it's interesting. Everyone's asking about, like, is honey okay? Is a banana okay? Is this okay? You're like, well, the booze you're drinking isn't that great. So
I
maybe
know.
start there. Yeah.
I know, your 2-a-night quarantini habit is not helping you. And again, this is not judgy.
I'm not judging, but yeah, of
People
course.
they can manage their self-isolation, they can manage their breast cancer however they want. But
Correct.
but where I am sincere is look at your question. If you are questioning true nutrition, food that gives you nutrition, there is no argument in the research that fruits and vegetables and nuts and healthy fats and fish, fish with high, omega-3s and lean beef and even eggs and low-fat dairy, and whole grains, there is no dispute in the research that is all beneficial for health, not just for breast cancer, but for all of you. Think about Alzheimer's disease. That is also a significant issue, that they're looking at a nutritional component. And so the healthier your diet is, you're stacking the deck in your favor. There's no guarantee, and there's no one food that will or won't make your cancer better or worse.
Let's jump, with that said, to probiotics. We got a question on what are your thoughts on probiotics, beneficial or not? If they're beneficial, any probiotics that you've heard have helped. Obviously, we're not going to give any brand recommendations here, so we won't be doing that. But do you have any thoughts on probiotics as a whole?
Yeah. So you've probably heard, and I'm sure your viewers have heard about the gut microbiota, the healthy gut microbiome. This is kind of new in the lay public information, but for me as a dietitian, the gut microbiota, I have been attending workshops and seminars on that for years at all of my conferences. And so what's interesting is you have a gut microbiota, but you also have breast microbiota. Did you know that? People may not know that.
Yeah.
I know. I wrote about it on my blog and people were like, what is that? Is that true? Absolutely. And it's fascinating. So again, when you are feeding your breasts, you are feeding the rest of your body for nourishment and overall health and well-being. So the thing about probiotics is probiotics are fed with prebiotics. Probiotics help support a healthy gut mucosal lining. And when your gut is healthy and balanced, your brain is healthy and balanced, your breasts, they're linking it to so many immune system, so many different things.
Wow.
So think about this. Probiotics are things that in food, always look at the food first, are fermented foods like sauerkraut and kimchi. Kimchi may not be something that your viewers eat regularly, but they perhaps would eat yogurt or kefir on a more regular basis. Those are fermented. Sauerkraut, pickles, those are all fermented foods. But probiotics need prebiotics in order to be activated and work optimally. And prebiotics are things like garlic and onions. And I put a nice list together here. Where is my list? Garlic and onions and where's my list? Hang on, I think I have it on another page. Oh yeah, asparagus, bananas, back to the bananas again, barley, oats, apples, foods that just give you good nutrition anyway. Any of those foods are not negative nutrition foods. Those are all high nutrition foods. So the prebiotics feed the probiotics for a healthy gut. If you need a supplement, that's questionable, and that's a very individualized recommendation, which we're not doing here, to your point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Cool, great, thanks for that. You mentioned it earlier, I want to come back to it, is inflammation. Inflammation is super important. We had a user ask us a question as it relates to foods considered to be inflammatory. Can you tell us what is the relationship between breast cancer and foods considered to be inflammatory?
Yes. Let me find my notes. Okay. So let's talk about, I mentioned earlier, low-grade systemic inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when you go to see your doctor for your annual wellness checkup, they will do something called a CRP test, which is a C-reactive protein. And that looks at the level of inflammation in your body, which is kind of an interesting, they look at it for heart disease risk because inflammation and heart disease are connected. But I also think it's valuable in terms of, again, just looking at low-grade systemic inflammation. I'll tell you a very quick story. I went to see my GP on a Monday, 24 hours after I had run a half marathon on Sunday. And she did a CRP test and it was 1,000 times higher than it should have been.
Oh, wow.
Like I should have been dead with these results.
Oh my God,
and
no,
she's like, and I'm like, this is not, no. This has to do with inflammation from me running that half marathon and I had the blood test while my body was still recovering and repairing, right? Don't do that. If you run anything with distance, save your blood test for at least a week to 10 days out. So we had to redo the test because it was a false positive. And so that is how sensitive it is in terms of looking at inflammation in your body. All right, so what causes low-grade systemic inflammation? Lots of things, but a poor diet, inactivity, obesity, overweight, those all contribute to a low-grade inflammation. When you talk about what are inflammatory foods, those are things like fried foods and high added sugar foods. And again, the foods that just naturally, if you're trying to nourish your body, you reduce or eliminate.
Correct.
So you want, and I tend to focus on encouraging people to look at what they can add to their diet versus what they should be cutting out, because I hear that so often in the breast cancer community. What shouldn't I be eating? What should I avoid? What should I stay away from? I'm like, look. Let's look what you're currently doing and see where there are holes that we can add in positive, pro-healthy inflammation, like reduced inflammation foods. So let me see. So nutrients and phytochemicals that are antioxidants, those have anti-inflammatory effects. So vitamin C, vitamin E, selenium, carotenoids, those are foods. Carotenoids are what make oranges orange and carrots orange and sweet potatoes orange. Vitamin C, you can find those in any citrus, but also bell peppers. Vitamin E, you can find that in wheat germ and other types of, healthy oils. So the common denominator is food. There's the food gives you those particular antioxidants, but also lots of other nutrients packaged with that. It's called synergy. And all of those lead to low inflammation. So plant compounds, polyphenols that we find in tea and coffee and berries and lots of fruits and vegetables, those are broken down in the digestive tract. And when those little pieces go out into your body, they have anti-inflammatory effects. What I see often in the lay public, the readings about this is, eat these foods for anti-inflammatory. These are the foods you should eat to reduce inflammation in your body. We don't have that yet because these foods, so that I was just describing, they have these compounds, these components, these nutrients that look to be anti-inflammatory, can collectively reduce inflammation, but we don't have research that shows this food will definitely reduce inflammation, but collectively all of them together could have a little bit of an impact on reducing inflammation. But by the way, they protect your heart and your brain, and they keep your blood sugar stable, and they increase your fiber, so good all the way around.
Yeah, so it's interesting. We have a question here from 2 users right now live, one from Sharon saying, she's in active chemo treatment right now. She's saying, are there foods or drinks I can consume to help decrease joint pain and swelling? And then we have a question from Stephanie about inflammation saying, what about food sensitivity tests? If I'm showing sensitivity, does that cause additional inflammation? So 2 questions there.
Say that again about the second one with the food sensitivity.
She's saying, what about food sensitivity tests? If I'm showing sensitivity, does that cause additional inflammation?
Oh, okay. I don't know. I can't speak to that because food sensitivities aren't my area of expertise. Mm-hmm. That would be someone who, a dietitian who works with allergies and intolerances and sensitivities. So I can't really speak to that. But it does make sense. I mean, there's acute inflammation where you cut or injure yourself, and then there's low-grade inflammation that can come from a variety of things. And a sensitivity to something, it's agitating So you may see it visibly. You may have, you know, maybe someone eats something and they break up in hives or so. Is that inflammation? Yes, but is that the same as systemic low-grade inflammation that is constant and chronic, or is that considered acute? That I don't know the answer to that. And then the question before that about foods or supplements for chemo?
Yeah, are there any foods or drinks that she should consume to help decrease joint pain and swelling while on active chemo treatment? That you think of?
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that either, because if you think about joint, so here's what I would relate it to. So aromatase inhibitors that many women who have hormonally positive, postmenopausal, hormonally positive breast cancer, like I did, I just finished up 5 years of aromatase inhibitors about 4 weeks ago. And so joint pain is something that comes with that. And what we see in the literature for joint pain from treatment and from whether the treatment is medication, because medication is always a treatment, or the actual chemo itself, is activity. Walking, swimming, you know, whatever you can tolerate. So again, check with your doctor before you do anything that you're not doing now in terms of activity. But what we tend to see is that activity can alleviate some of that pain. And I've certainly found that to be true, and I've read it in the research, I've experienced it, and then I've heard it anecdotally from other breast cancer women in the community. So I would suggest maybe trying something like that. But there's no food or drink. Again, that's something that I was always like, is there something I can take that would make me a little less stiff and achy? And unfortunately, if it's out there, I don't know what it is. But
okay, I want to jump into our next topic, which is estrogen.
Okay.
We got many questions about estrogen. I'm going to read a few of them because I know that you're going to be able to address them. So just for our listeners, a bunch of questions came in, and these are just some. So I have estrogen and progesterone positive DCIS breast cancer. What dietary restrictions do I have? Another question, is it okay to occasionally use soy milk? What is included in a low estrogen diet? What else can I do to decrease estrogen levels? What type of foods to lower estrogen levels? What food should I avoid since my cancer is estrogen and progesterone positive? So really, let's just dive into estrogen and answer as many of these as you can.
Dive into the estrogen. Think about that. I'm just having a vision. Okay.
Yeah.
I could use some estrogen. I would like some estrogen in my body. It would help for a lot of things. Anyway, so yeah, you've got a lot of questions about that. So first of all, let's start at the beginning. And I use myself as a living example of I had hormonally positive breast cancer. I did not change my diet to eliminate any foods. And I'll tell you why. Is because I did a quick search on this just because I hear this consistently, and I want to just see what's floating around out there right now. And so some of the more inflammatory language around estrogens and breast cancer is don't eat these foods, they're high in estrogen, they will cause breast cancer. Don't eat these foods, they're high in estrogen, they will make your breast cancer worse. And we don't see that in the research. And here's why. Because plant foods that they're talking about in these particular, and I'll talk about what those foods are, but phytoestrogens are plant estrogens. These are plant foods where most of these articles are talking about. Phytoestrogens or plant estrogens are not the same as the endogenous estrogen in your body. Endogenous means your body produces. They're two different things. They mimic each other, but they're separate. And so things like flax and whole soy and dried fruit and sesame seeds and garlic and peaches and berries and wheat bran and cruciferous veggies. This is a list that I pulled just from one particular article, which actually was a well-researched, good article, and it used these foods for reference. Which indicates that these foods all have health properties. They do have phytoestrogens, but what the research shows is that there's very limited, weak evidence in animal studies to suggest that these foods would be quote unquote dangerous. The human studies don't find the same, but we have very limited human studies. So there's limited research, it's very mixed, it's inconclusive. And I think one of the strongest questions come around soy, because soy does have isoflavones, which is a phytoestrogen. and it mimics estrogen in the body. And the word given by oncologists used to be, don't eat it because that's estrogen will raise your body's estrogen. And that has been disproven repeatedly in the research, but it's like the myth that won't die. I continued to eat. I ate whole soy foods before my diagnosis. I continued to eat them. In fact, I just had tofu last night. I still include soy foods in my diet. Yes, I use whole soy milk, but I use original plain soy milk. There's nothing in it except water and organic soy beans. There's no added sugar. There's that, because added sugar is something that I don't want. So, so whole soy foods like tofu and tempeh and edamame, those are fine to include in your diet. Most our Western diet is not built on soy foods. Maybe if you eat a vegan diet, you may eat more soy foods than someone who doesn't. But still, I don't know that we're eating it every single day. So if you alternate, because we don't really have definitive guidelines on you should eat this much or not eat that much. The way I do it, I don't white knuckle it. I just, I love tofu, I love tempeh. Do I have them every week? No, maybe,
Right.
I couldn't even tell you it's just when I am in the mood to have it in a particular dish. Do I have soy milk every day? I put soy milk in my coffee and in my tea. If I have oatmeal, I'll put it there on cereal, but I don't eat that every day. So think about frequency. It's always, people talk about, is this food so bad for me? And when I say bad, it's like, is it damaging to my health? It's like the dose is in, the poison is in the dose. So if you're eating a ton of sugar that's added to your diet, that's more problematic than someone who has added sugar a few times a week or occasionally. Same thing with soy food. So I would say just, I wouldn't exclude any of those foods, and I haven't personally, because I didn't feel that the research, I don't feel it's compelling to say don't eat these foods. There's so many other health benefits with them.
Cool. That's great.
Long answer, but it's not a black and white. Black and white answer.
I don't think any of these are black and white, and
none of them are. No, not a single one. Hence my notes that I have here.
No, of course. And so we also want to make sure that everyone understands that, there is.
Can I say one more thing? Wait, let me say one more point about soy, just to wrap up, because I want to make sure people hear this. So with soy, the new research studies, the latest, for the past several years and currently, show that whole soy, remember, is associated with reduced mortality and recurrence in both ER positive and ER negative, hormonally positive and hormonally negative breast cancer. And that, I'm not minimizing the concern that women have with that, is because you hear hormone and you think, do I need to eat differently? My cancer is different than my massage therapist friend who had triple negative. We both, does that make a difference in our diets? At this point, it does not. If that changes in time with, as I talked about, targeted precision nutrition based on tumor biology, that's a different story, but we're not there yet. And so with science, what's maddening to so many people is they're like, it changes all the time. True scientists, like those of us who are trained in science, we're like, yes, and that's a good thing, because you want it to change and always be evolving. People who struggle with that are like, no, I want one answer and I want it to stay the same. That's not progressive, and it's not the way, especially nutrition science doesn't work that way. So that's all I have to say about that.
No, that's great. I want to go into weight gain really quickly. So we got 3 separate questions from users. One actually right now live at the Q&A about weight gain. So I'll give you the 3 questions and we'll try to address them. The first question is there a different weight scale for people with metastatic breast cancer? So this user specifically said that she told us she had gained 40 pounds and was only really eating 1 meal a day ever since her diagnosis. And she wonders, could that be from her breast cancer diagnosis? Another user asked, I'm having radiation and was told to eat nutritious foods high in proteins and calories, but I'm overweight. Why should I be eating high caloric foods? And then right now we had Yvonne asked us, I'm struggling with trying to lose weight as she's taking anastrozole. Anastrozole, thank you. She's struggling with trying to lose weight on that pill because it's causing weight gain. So any suggestions on good diet for her? And as you can see, these are all obviously very different questions, but all surrounding the idea of weight gain for people with breast cancer. So let's see what we can get out.
Okay, let's talk about weight gain, because it is, so it's a charged topic, and I'll tell you why. Because my career in nutrition, I have worked with so many women with weight issues, in a weight management capacity. Often, what I found is that weight gain in a healthy population, as well as in the breast cancer population, isn't always connected to the medication and or the food intake, which sounds crazy. People are like, well, that makes no sense, but just stick with me. So we use food. Remember, we talked about emotional eating. We use food for so many other reasons than simply nourishment.
Right.
So weight gain are there medications that we take when we're in treatment that cause weight gain? Absolutely. Steroids cause weight gain, and they prescribe steroids to help manage pain with chemotherapy, 100%. Medications like the aromatase inhibitors I just mentioned that I just finished, are those connected to weight gain? That was one of the first questions I asked my doctor. I've read about, what about weight gain? She said, usually on average 5 to 10 pounds, which, I was like, no, because like 0 would be the answer for that. But here's the thing. The research does support that the weight gain is minimal. Now, we're statistics of one, right? We are not statistics. We are live, breathing women. So what I find is that there are so many factors, not just in the breast cancer world, but like I said, all the years I've worked in weight management is, are you emotionally eating? Are you eating when you're bored? Are you eating a nourished diet, or are you overfed with an undernourished situation? Where does alcohol play a role? I know I keep talking about alcohol, but it's overlooked. Women, they focus on the food and they hammer the food, and they really forget alcohol comes with 7 calories per gram and it's empty calories. Are you active? Were you active before, but your treatment has left you feeling exhausted or achy or unable to do to the full capacity what you did before your treatment in terms of being active? All of those things are legitimate, and they all play a role in weight gain. What are your family genetics? Do you gain weight easily, or you tend more toward the lean side? That's also another issue. If you are someone who struggled with weight your entire life, and now you have breast cancer and you become, let's say you're not active at all now. I mean, a lot of us are not very active because we're in our homes now, but even pre-COVID, what was your activity level? Do you tend to put on weight if you decrease your activity, and then does your food intake increase because you've decreased your activity and you're feeling bad about that? So it's kind of a vicious cycle. What I found is if you start to gain weight, can medication cause weight gain? 100%. Yet sometimes it's easy to check out from your body, like your head and your body are disconnected. And, we can disconnect from our bodies as breast cancer patients and survivors because they've been accosted. I mean, you don't want to see what's still there and the changes. It can be really, there's a challenge with that. So all of this, what I'm speaking to is there are so many variables that contribute to weight gain and weight loss that there's no one simple answer. If someone's eating 1 meal a day, that's something I would definitely say back up and let's see, can you maybe spread that out, distribute your eating throughout the day, because what tends to happen is, and I'm not saying this is what she's doing, because I don't know anything about any of these people who are asking the questions, but just from my experience, if you're eating 1 meal a day, by the time you get to that 1 meal, you may be over hungry. So you may be eating larger volume, and sometimes people eat 1 meal, but the meal extends into the evening. So it's a very long, large meal.
Yeah.
Do you snack after dinner? Do you, again, eat when you're not hungry? Do you do weight training activities? I mean, exercise doesn't play as significant a role in weight loss as women would like it to. They're like, oh, if I just start running, I'll drop weight. Not necessarily. Right. Your cardiovascular strength and stamina will improve. Your blood sugar will probably improve, your blood pressure, but it doesn't necessarily translate to a change on the scale. It's 2 sides of the same coin, your nutrition and your fitness, and you've got to look at where you are in balancing those 2 things.
Yeah.
So that's not a black or white answer, but have I given you one black or white answer? No.
No.
Is that helpful?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, all of this is super helpful. We just talked about, your body and your health. I want to kind of go a little bit away from that to religion real fast because
Religion. Yeah.
religion. So, we had a user reach out and say that his sister-in-law is a breast cancer patient, and she's undergoing radiation and chemo, and that Ramadan is starting actually. And he was wondering, should she keep fasting or not? And I really would love for you to talk about, how you've handled with people who've worked with you, religious beliefs and traditions with dietary needs during treatment. And what do you suggest they do in situations like this?
Yeah. So I don't know anything about her at all. I don't know what her weight is.
Right.
I don't know what her, where she's at in her treatment, how she's responding to treatment. So what I would pull back and say, first of all, I would defer to her to work with her oncology dietitian if she has access to one, to look, because sometimes, and this kind of speaks to the woman, I'm kind of talking back to the point we were just talking about, the woman who said, I'm already overweight and I've been recommended to eat a high calorie diet and high protein. If someone is at risk for, and radiation doesn't typically cause weight loss. So I'm kind of talking to both of these things. So the woman who asked that question, does she need higher protein going into radiation? That's not a bad idea because radiation breaks down and impacts the integrity of the cells, and you want to use nutrition to rebuild cells. But does she need higher calorie? Again, I don't know anything about her, but if she says she's overweight, I believe her. And what typically the party line would be is that make sure you keep your nutrition and calories up so you don't lose too much weight, which could then impact your treatment routine. Some people drop so much weight during treatment, but usually chemo, that they have to halt or pause their treatment. And we want to keep people moving through treatment. So the same thing for the person with Ramadan. If she's dramatically underweight, I don't know that fasting would be the best idea, but you've also got to be respectful of religious practices. Right. This is not something you can discount because you're going through cancer treatment. That's a really important piece of just your culture and your heritage, everything else. And so you can't just dismiss it and say, oh, you need to eat during Ramadan because you have cancer. It depends on how stabilized is she with her health, and nutrition is what should be looked at. And then honoring those practices if it makes sense, for sure.
We actually got a question here specifically about fasting from Sheila asking, is fasting even okay to do? What is your opinion on fasting as a whole?
I wrote a great blog article on fasting, on intermittent fasting. There's a list, just like, I'll say that. There is a list of different types of fasting. There's religious fasting that people have done forever. There is intermittent fasting, which I'm sure people have heard about. There are water fasts, there are juice fasts. When people say fasting, to me, my dietitian brain goes, what are you talking about? Are you talking about just not eating? Are you talking about sips of water? Are you talking about waiting 13 hours to eat food? What are you talking about? Because there is, again, no black or white. There are all those shades of gray that determine what's the context behind the question.
Right.
And so what I advocate for, and I do this myself, is there's some interesting, compelling research about intermittent fasting and reducing risk of breast cancer. Is it definitive? Is it the gold 100%? Here's the answer. No, but I thought it was compelling enough because fasting impacts your body metabolically, and cancer is a metabolic disease. So we keep going back to that. So what fasting does is it allows the metabolism, the digestion, everything else to rest. It doesn't stop completely. Your body doesn't shut down when you're not eating or when you're sleeping. Otherwise, you would be dead. I mean, everything keeps moving. It just slows down. So the research suggests waiting, a 13-hour fast between last meal and when you eat again. And so I do that, not, again, white knuckling it like, oh my gosh, it's 12 hours and 55 minutes. I can't eat yet. I don't do that.
Right.
But I am aware of, I like 13 hours to go by between my last meal in the evening and when I eat again in the morning. Is it helping reduce my risk? There's no way you can, I'm not in a study, I'm not in a trial, so I don't know. But I just think, I look at it as how many little tricks and tips can I put in my toolbox to help me potentially reduce my risk of recurrence? I will do that. And that's one of them. So a 13-hour fast for me, what that looks like is I usually finish dinner around between 6 and 6:30, earlier the better. And then I don't eat breakfast again, eat again with breakfast until about 7:30, 7:45 the next morning. And that works for my schedule. That wouldn't work for everyone. Right. But the point of that is too, It speaks to the weight gain. A lot of women, a lot of men, a lot of people, not just women, I'm not harping on women, but so many women in the breast cancer community tend to eat at night. They finish dinner and then they keep eating till they go to bed, right? And you're not eating carrots. You know, you're not sitting there watching Netflix with a big old bowl of carrots. So think about that in terms of all of these components that add up to the context of you reducing risk overall with all the habits you can bring in.
Yeah. So I want to be mindful of time because we are just at time. So I'm going to ask one last question, and then we are going to wrap up with it. But the last question I want to get to is, you know, just someone asked this idea of best foods to eat during chemo. Like, you know, what would you suggest for people to be eating while they're undergoing chemo treatment? And if you have any tips or snacks to help avoid nausea.
Yeah, so I'm not an oncology dietitian, so I don't work in the trenches with cancer patients. I'm a lifestyle dietitian, but I do have that, you know, training in my back pocket. So really what I recommend for the women who ask me that is during chemo, if you are feeling horrible and you don't have an appetite and food tastes odd, really work with your oncology dietitian to address that. And on those days, even if you don't have access to an oncology dietitian, you're probably not going to be eating much anyway. You eat what you can tolerate on those days. If it's ice cream and ice cream and ice cream, that's what you eat. And then when that dissipates on the days between your next treatment and you start to feel better, that's when you look to eating the most well-nourished diet that you can. And when I say that, I mean quality. Really look at the quality of your food you're putting in your body. Focus on quality, 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 and that makes a difference on what you choose. And with the nausea, same thing. Some people have great success with crackers or toast, you know, dry toast, things like it's just whatever you can tolerate. Again, I don't have a specific answer for that. But those carby foods like crackers and cereal and such tend to help people minimize that nausea. So if that works for you, find your favorite crackers and cereals and do that. And then on the days you feel better, eat the more, you know, the higher nutrient base.
So I do want to say, you know, in closing that it's really important for everyone to remember that there is no black and white. There is no clear answers to a lot of these questions. And then to your point, you know, you need to be working with a lot of different people to get the best solution for you. Everything's individualized. Every person reacts somewhat differently. Yes, there are some studies out there. Yes, there is some science to it. And we touched upon that today. But as a whole, you know, get your team together and really make sure that you can, you know, find the best options and outcomes for you, really. So I really want to thank you, Cathy, and everyone listening and watching for joining us today. As always, please download our app, Outcomes4Me. You'll get more information on future webinars, your treatment options, third-party resources, and so much more to make you feel better and take care of yourself. Just so everyone knows, this video, along with a recap, will be posted on our blog page in the next few days and available for you on our Facebook page. So make sure to follow us to revisit the content and share with a friend. Please feel free to reach out to Cathy if you want to work directly with her. She's great. She has a lot of resources available to you. And please make sure to visit her website or message her directly on her Instagram account. And Cathy, if there's anything else you'd love to say, please take the floor.
How much time do we have?
Go for it. We have a few minutes.
Okay, well, just to wrap up quickly, to your point, there was one more question that you summed it up wonderfully. Your summation there was great. You had sent me a question about sesame seeds and tamoxifen, and I wanted to address that because I was like, let me see what the research is showing on that sesame seeds could negatively impact how tamoxifen works. Unless I missed something, every research piece of work that I found was on mice. Mice models are not human models. So please, 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 I just beg you all, when you are looking at research, there are criteria for whether research is credible and gold standard and impactful. And if research doesn't tick all those boxes for me, I'm like, well, that's interesting, but this is not what we use. So there's that. And then if I can just wrap up, I have 6 takeaways. Do we have time for that?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So number 1, your pattern of eating is much more important than any one single food. These are 6 things I want you to remember when you're questioning yourself, because we second guess ourselves. I know you do. I know you think, I knew what I was supposed to do to be healthy, and then I got breast cancer. Now I don't know what to do. So take these 6 takeaways. Number 1 is pattern. So how you eat over a week, a month, 6 months, a year is much more telling about how well nourished you are and have the integrity of your diet than just one food, like one candy bar or one chocolate donut. Those are the bad guys that people tend to pick on, okay? Number 2, research supports plant-based diets are beneficial, but that doesn't mean you need to eat 100% vegan or even a vegetarian diet. It's really just focusing on putting more plants on your plate and using meat as a condiment. Number 3, keep treat foods in your diet. So the woman who asked about, is it okay to have a treat once in a while? Are you kidding me? I have chocolate pretty much every single night. But the chocolate that I enjoy is 95% cocoa. It's the really dark, bitter stuff, because I don't like sweet. I don't like added sugar anyway, but just in general. But now I sweeten it with, I'll pair that with dates, dried dates. So the sugary, sweet, added natural sweet dates with dark chocolate, that does it for me. If someone said I could never eat that again, I'd be like, not listening to you, eating my chocolate and dates. Next one, learn which foods make you feel best. Only you know that, okay? I don't think it's a steady diet of junk food that makes you feel your best. And when I say best, I mean energy, focus, clarity, stamina, just that resilience that you get when you do the right things for your body. Find out the foods that make you feel best and eat those. They're health supportive foods. You put in the good stuff, you get out the good stuff. And that'll support your immune system and all the other great things we talked about. The next one is lose the good food, bad food mindset. I used to make people give me a quarter. So my clients in my private practice, if they would say, I was really bad today, or I ate some really bad food, I would be like, was your food spoiled? Did it have mold on it? Did you get it out of the garbage can? That's what bad food is. Or bad food is food that's prepared horribly and it tastes terrible because someone didn't know how to cook it for you. There is no good or bad food, okay? All food is neutral, but there are habits that are better than others. So if your habit is choosing quality nutrition, that will help you shift that mindset from the food was bad, therefore I am bad, because that does not serve you. And then finally, regardless of your body weight or where you are in your treatment, focus on quality, nutrient-dense choices. So those are the foods that are going to nourish your body and do all of these great things we've talked about. So plant-based, whole, minimally processed, reduced added sugar, limit red meat and avoid processed meats. And then, I have to end with the alcohol. Watch, that's an issue. So, or if it is an issue for you. So don't beat up on the bananas and the apples, beat up on the alcohol. And that's all I have.
Cathy, thank you again so much. And again, everyone, please make sure to download the app. This blog post that will be a recap will be available in the app for everyone within the next few days. So thanks again. And
thank you.
See you guys next time. Bye, Cathy.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Bye, guys.